I want to begin with a detail, not a battle, not a death toll, not a statement from a capital, a detail. On the 2nd of March, 2026, the third day of what the Americans are calling Operation Epic Fury and the Israelis are calling Operation Roaring Lion, Iran's foreign minister announced in plain language that some units of the Revolutionary Guard are no longer receiving orders from a central command, that they are operating instead on prearranged instructions. General directives issued before the war began. Contingency protocols activated not by a commander, but by the absence of one. Read that again. The military apparatus of the Iranian state, the force that controls the missiles, the drones, the proxy networks, the naval assets in the Persian Gulf, is now, in part, running on instructions that no living person issued today. Instructions from a command structure that no longer exists, a machine that was set in motion before the killing of the supreme leader, before the elimination of the army chief, before the assassination of the defense minister, and the head of the Revolutionary Guard, and the security advisor, all in the first hours of the first day. A machine running without an operator. I have studied enough military history to know what this means. It does not mean chaos, necessarily. It means something more dangerous than chaos. It means a war that can no longer be stopped by negotiation with the people who started it, because the people who can stop the machine are gone, and the machine does not stop on its own. This is the detail that the news cycle cannot quite name, because the news cycle needs a counterpart, a phone number, a leader to call, a man across the table. There is no man across the table today. 3 days ago, the United States and Israel launched the largest military operation in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. They called it, depending on which flag was flying over the aircraft, either Epic Fury or Roaring Lion. The target was the leadership of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in the opening hours. Approximately 40 senior officials died with him. The army chief, the defense minister, the head of the Revolutionary Guard, the security advisor, an entire generation of institutional knowledge, eliminated in the time it takes to watch a film. The operation was magnificent in its precision. It was extraordinary in its ambition. And it is now, on the morning of day 3, producing consequences that the precision did not anticipate and that the ambition did not account for. This is the pattern. This is always the pattern. I want to walk you through what the last 6 hours have shown us. Not because the events themselves are the story, they are the surface of the story, but because in the accumulation of these specific events, on this specific morning, a shape is becoming visible that historians will recognize long after the participants have finished explaining what they intended. Natanz was hit last night. I want you to understand the weight of that sentence before I continue. Natanz is not a military base. Natanz is the physical embodiment of the question that has driven this conflict for 20 years, the underground enrichment facility, the site that was struck in June of 2025 and declared significantly degraded. The site that the IAEA warned in the weeks before this operation began still contained uranium enriched to 60% purity, a technical step from weapons grade, in underground tunnels that the previous strikes had not reached. Iran announced last night that Natanz has now been struck again. 3 possibilities present themselves, and all 3 are significant. The first, the strike destroyed what the previous strike did not. The enriched material is gone. The program is genuinely set back by years. If this is true, then the military objective of the operation has been achieved. And the question becomes whether what was achieved is worth what was set in motion to achieve it. The second, the strike destroyed the visible infrastructure of Natanz, but the enriched material in the deeper tunnels survived again. The IAEA cannot currently verify because its inspectors were expelled months ago. No one outside the Iranian state knows what is in those tunnels. If this is true, then the central justification for the operation remains unverified, and a government that has been decapitated is now the sole custodian of knowledge about material that is the most consequential substance on Earth. The third, the strike has created conditions in which radioactive material may be at risk of dispersal or compromise in an underground facility, in a country whose command structure is partially severed and whose emergency response infrastructure is under active bombardment. The IAEA has stated it is closely monitoring developments. It has found no evidence of radiological impact. Yet, let me tell you what else happened in the last 6 hours. Lebanon opened. For more than a year, since the 2024 ceasefire, Hezbollah had been quiet, rebuilding, watching, calculating the moment. That moment arrived this morning when Hezbollah fired rockets into Israel for the first time since the ceasefire, explicitly citing the killing of Khamenei as justification. Israel responded immediately. Strikes on Beirut, strikes on the Bekaa Valley, strikes on southern Lebanon. Lebanon's health ministry reported at least 31 dead and 149 wounded before noon. Israel also killed the head of Hezbollah's parliamentary bloc, Mohammed Rad, in a targeted strike. And then Israel sent evacuation warnings to approximately 50 villages in southern and eastern Lebanon. Evacuation warnings to 50 villages is not a tactical adjustment. It is the preparation for a ground phase. It is the signal that what began as a strike campaign is being expanded into something that requires civilians to be elsewhere before it begins. The Lebanese government banned Hezbollah's military and security activities within 24 hours of the rockets being fired. Whether a government in Beirut banning Hezbollah has any practical effect is a question that anyone with passing familiarity with Lebanese political history can answer, but Israel responded to the ban by warning that it would strike major infrastructure unless the government took further steps. This is the logic of escalation in its purest form. Each step produces the conditions that require the next step. The architecture of the conflict is now generating its own momentum, independent of the intentions of any individual actor within it. Now look east across the Gulf. Qatar's energy infrastructure was struck last night. The Ras Laffan industrial complex, the facility through which Qatar supplies liquefied natural gas to Europe and Asia, was hit by Iranian missiles. Limited damage reported. The significance is not the damage. The significance is the target. Qatar has been the mediator. Qatar has been the channel through which indirect communications between the United States and Iran have flowed for years. Iran struck it anyway. A senior Gulf Arab official told CNN this morning that Iran's strikes on neighboring states were a miscalculation, that Tehran had lost all goodwill from Islamic and Arab states. The official is almost certainly correct. Iran struck countries that had spent years building careful relationships with Tehran precisely to avoid being caught in this moment. Those relationships are now gone, not damaged, gone, and the machine that destroyed them is still running. In the waters off Oman, a drone boat exploded against a Marshall Islands flagged oil tanker. 1 mariner killed. At least 150 tankers are anchored in open Gulf waters. Emirates and Etihad have grounded all flights until Tuesday afternoon. 1,560 flights canceled today. 41% of scheduled arrivals into the region. Hundreds of thousands of passengers stranded. The Dow Jones fell 543 points at opening. The S&P lost over 1%. NASDAQ futures dropped 1.6. These are not catastrophic numbers. They are the market pricing a possibility. The possibility has not yet become the certainty. When and if the strait formally closes rather than functionally closes, the numbers will not describe the event. They will trail behind it. Now I want to tell you about 2 statements made this morning, within hours of each other, that together constitute what historians call a signal. Trump told NBC News that Iranian officials want to talk, that he has agreed to talk. The White House confirmed this. Within hours, Ali Larijani, the security chief, the highest-ranking surviving official of the Iranian state, posted on X. Iran will not negotiate with the United States. 2 governments, 2 contradictory statements, issued in public, on the record. What history notes about this kind of signal is not which statement is true. What history notes is that when parties to an active conflict are issuing contradictory public statements about whether they are talking, neither side fully controls its own narrative, which means neither side fully controls its own escalation. Inside Iran itself, the picture is more complex than any single description can hold. In Karaj, in Shiraz, in Kermanshah, in Isfahan, videos circulated of crowds celebrating the death of Khamenei. Security forces opened fire on some of those crowds. A monument to Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic, was toppled by a crowd in southern Iran. At the same time, in Tehran's Engilab Square, tens of thousands of mourners gathered to mark what they were calling Khamenei's martyrdom. The same city, the same morning. Grief and celebration. What the bombs have done is make both things simultaneously more intense. The people who hated the regime have watched their country be destroyed by the same people who claim to be liberating them. The people who supported the regime have been given, in the most complete form imaginable, the martyrdom narrative that the Islamic Republic has been constructing since 1979. Both of these responses are available to the machine that is still running without an operator. I want to close today with something that exists only in the spaces between the events I have described, in the logic that connects them. 3 days ago, Oman's foreign minister announced that a diplomatic breakthrough had been achieved, that Iran had agreed to degrade its nuclear stockpiles to the lowest possible level, full IAEA verification. Peace was within reach. His words. Peace was within reach. 14 hours later, Natanz was on fire. Today, the American president says Iran wants to talk. Today, the highest surviving official of the Iranian state says Iran will not negotiate. Today, Hezbollah is firing rockets into Israel for the first time in over a year. Qatar's energy infrastructure has been struck. A British air base in Cyprus has been struck. A tanker in the Gulf of Oman has been struck by a drone boat. And somewhere in the underground tunnels of Isfahan and Natanz, Enriched uranium sits in quantities that the IAEA cannot currently verify, in facilities that have now been struck, in a country whose command structure is running on pre-arranged instructions that no living person is modifying in real time. The machine is running. This is day 3. Trump says 4 weeks or less. I have seen enough of these moments to know that the timeline belongs to the man who announces it only as long as the situation permits. The situation is not currently consulting the timeline. The threshold between a contained regional war and something that does not have a clean name yet is not crossed dramatically. It is crossed in the accumulation of small events, each individually explicable, none individually catastrophic, whose combined weight eventually exceeds the architecture designed to contain them. The strait is not formally closed. The nuclear material has not been confirmed destroyed. The new Iranian leadership has not been formed. The Hezbollah front has not been resolved. The Gulf states have stated in formal diplomatic language that they retain the right to respond. None of these open variables have closed yet. Each of them is a door, and behind each door the machine is still running. I began today with a detail. I want to end with one. On the morning of the 3rd day, a woman was photographed walking through the street outside the Gandhi Hospital in Tehran. The hospital had been struck in the night. She was walking past the rubble. She was not running. She was not looking up. She was simply walking. I do not know her name. I do not know whether she had supported the regime or opposed it. What I know is that she was there. The decisions that produced the rubble she was walking past were made in Washington and Tel Aviv and Tehran over months and years and decades. The legal arguments, the red lines, the breakthroughs announced and then overtaken, the machines set in motion and then severed from their operators, all of it produced, on the morning of the 3rd day, that woman walking through that street. History is not made in the rooms where the decisions are made. History is made in the streets those decisions produce. The rooms will be argued about for generations. The presidents and prime ministers will give their accounts of what they intended, and the street will remain, carrying in its rubble the full and unedited record of what was actually decided. History does not punish intentions. It only records outcomes. Day 3. The machine is still running.